Thank you.
Hello, Bitcoin Amsterdam. How are you guys doing? You know, I'm also European, so this is like more the American way, but I live there now, so I hope you can forgive me. But this is going to be an exciting conversation here. I have none other here than Willem Middelkoop, and he mentioned that he has a very personal connection to this place as well. But before I say that, he is, of course, a former journalist, but you have written also 8 books about all kinds of different topics regarding the economy, business cycles, fiat money, gold, and he is also frequently talking about Bitcoin. And he and I have been discussing this backstage as well. We will be pausing our friendship for the time being to make it a little bit more, controversial. And yes, we had a Bitcoin conference, but it doesn't mean that you always have to hear the same things about like how great Bitcoin is. I mean, no doubt it is, but there should be also some good arguments against that, and we're trying to make it a little bit spicy today. My name is Wolf, and I'm the CEO of Students for Liberty, an international pro-liberty student organization that is active in 107 countries. We actually pay 20 of our staff members in Bitcoin, and I'm a huge fan as well. I also have a master's in Austrian economics and a PhD in political economy. However, the real expert is this gentleman here. And so, Willem, you mentioned earlier that you have a personal connection to this place here because you were dating your wife around here. Is that so?
Yeah, it was about 29 years ago that I met my wife at Westergasfabriek during a party. And, well, here we are, back again.
Very good. And so the audience is hungry for your insights. And so I know that you have in the past predicted hyperinflation. Hyperinflation is defined as inflation more than 50% in an annual year. And of course, many economies around the world have seen this, over 50 at this point. And you predicted a crash of the economic order. Now, they have been printing a lot of money, more money than ever before during COVID and still to this day. But is this still your thesis regarding hyperinflation? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, it's a bit more nuanced. I'm always afraid to use the word hyperinflation because, as you said, that's over 50% higher price every month. So that's very rare. But actually, when I wrote The Big Reset, I tried to explain that we are on the road towards hyperinflation. And we are on a road towards an implosion of the current financial system, which became very close after the Lehman crash in 2008. But we shouldn't forget that the central bankers who are very powerful and who built this system and who still own this system, they understand this very well. I'm always very negative, or I'm often quite negative on central bankers. But if I meet them, they're quite bright. They studied the monetary history. They know the classics. They know hyperinflation can happen. They know money can die. And that's why they keep gold. And that's why they add to their gold reserves, because they know they can always play the gold card to avoid hyperinflation when it's necessary. So I don't predict hyperinflation.
So that's a little bit of a controversial point. So you're saying that central banks, I mean, that's less controversial, but also good human beings, right? Somewhat.
Yeah.
But even more so, you're saying that they actually have the power to control the inflation, that it will not run away from them. Tell us more about that.
Well, actually, I've always been an outsider. I used to be a journalist. I even used to be a photojournalist. So when I started to write about the financial system, actually nobody took me that serious. Maybe still true. But actually, I joined a London-based think tank, a monetary think tank, OMVIF. And OMVIF is an odd beast. It's the think tank where central bankers and the private sector meet and discuss these kind of topics. And we could join them because they're always looking for sponsors. And I run the Commodity Discovery Fund, so we pay them 10,000 every year. And then we are allowed to sit in on these Zoom calls, on these meetings with central bankers where they discuss many of these topics. and they won't tell all during these meetings. But during these meetings, you get a very good impression what the current state of affairs is in the financial system, where we're heading, and what they're planning. And what I learned over the last few years is that they're building their own central bank digital currency. They're building their own digital, well, network, one could say. And what I also learned is that they take gold very serious. As a matter of fact, they just asked us if we could write a piece because they want to work on a larger essay on gold in the financial system. So in a way, they're starting to promote gold. And I never hear them about Bitcoin. The only time I hear them about Bitcoin is when they're discussing whether the on and off ramps should be opened or closed. So they see Bitcoin as real alternative money. It's like almost money which, well, they know they can't control Bitcoin, and that's what all you guys like. And that's why all you guys say Bitcoin would be a great successor for the dollar as the world's reserve currency. But since central bankers don't control and can't control Bitcoin, and they can control gold, and they all own gold in their financial reserves, I'm quite sure they'll play the gold card and they won't play the Bitcoin card. There's only one scenario where where Bitcoin could take over, and that's the be careful what you wish for scenario. That's when everything collapses. And central bankers and governments will lose control. But then you're in a Mad Max scenario. And then your neighbor with a bigger gun will take your bitcoins. So you don't want that.
So that's interesting. And since like I'm responsible for bringing some of the Austrian stuff in here, I would say that central bankers are able to control fiat money for a long time might be what Hayek would call the fatal conceit. Right? Because right now in the United States, you have 121% GDP per debt ratio. In the Netherlands, you're at 49. So you're in a much better space right now. You have much more time. But I think at some point, you know, they will not be able to print themselves out that anymore. However, they can probably do much more financial repression, instruct you know, people and bigger institutions to take more away money and have like different investments and so forth, so that you have to hold by force your investments in like government debt. All of these things are possible. So, but you're thinking that before Bitcoin ever will be actually discussed as a new money, gold will take over, central banks will just like replace the fiat money system with gold. Is that your thesis right now?
Look, the international financial system is man-made. It's not God-given, it's not given by nature, it's man-made. It's like a plumbing system. And you can change the financial system. So when the major powers in this world agree, it's very easy to morph into a next phase for this financial system. And when I wrote The Big Reset, in the epilogue, I explained there are two scenarios. Hopefully, the East and the West will keep working together within the IMF and move the international monetary system towards a next phase, make it more stable again, by using debt restructurings, a gold revaluation. But the other scenario, what I wrote in 2014, would be when the East and the West wouldn't be friends anymore and would be confronting each other, and then we could have war. And it's very hard for me to accept we're on the path to war now. And especially the US is really preparing for a very large conflict with China and Russia. And what I'm hearing from well-informed sources here in the Netherlands, that US is telling their European allies, well, to prepare for that as well. And this might start to complicate things for the financial system, because then you can't use a joint IMF monetary reset. So I don't have a crystal ball. It's very uncertain what will happen next. But this is the first time in the world ever that all the major blocs, East to West, were all part of this international monetary system, almost using the same rules, using the same plumbing system. This was all different after the Second World War, when we had Bretton Woods, and the US proposed to use the dollar as the new gold, as the world reserve currency. And then China and Russia, the communist country, the communist bloc, they opt out. They built their own system. And once their system collapsed at the late 1980s, they took over our system. And now we had this globalization trend, and now they try to deglobalize. China is trying to build their own system around the BRICS, them leading the BRICS. And the West is trying to decouple from China, which isn't possible. Ask the German car makers. But this is a new trend which only started 2-3 years ago. But it's a major trend. This deglobalization, this decoupling, will go on for quite some time. And I'm afraid once you walk that route of deglobalization and decoupling, this will end in a much larger conflict.
Right. That makes sense geopolitically. Going back to the backing of the monetary system, you think that gold could be something that could stabilize the system if ever it falls out of order. But what prevents something to take gold away? Because there's an inherent incentive for governments to go back to a fiat money system because they can just print themselves out again.
Yes.
So why would they stay on a gold standard? Or you just think it's a short-term thing?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't answer previously, but I was explaining how the former communist countries took over the Western financial system. So now we are in this worldwide plumbing system where money flows freely. And you shouldn't forget that China had very low debts, let's say around 2010. Russia defaulted on their debts in 91. But now, if you look at China, China built up so much debt, it's almost I think they're more indebted than Europe. They're almost as indebted as Japan. Japan is the world leader in national debt. But now the whole world is full of debt. There's a mountain of debt. And what we've done after the Lehman crisis is only create more debt and create a new layer of debt on top of the old debt, which caused this credit crisis, and we only build more credit and credit. So in a way, all these blocks, even when they are not fully cooperating financially or economically, they all have this same idea that they want to stay in control. That's the only thing which powers care about. They want to stay in control. And in a way, the Chinese leadership is the same as the EU leadership, is the same as the White House, the Pentagon leadership. And that's what makes it frightening for guys like us who are trying to put their money in stuff the government can't print, like gold or the digital gold Bitcoin. Because you shouldn't forget these guys in power. They have the guns, they make the laws, and they will never hand over that power to us because we think we have a better plan. And then come back to your question about gold. And because all these entities, Russia, China, EU, US, they all have around the same amount of gold per capita in their central bank vaults. So if they need to change the system, it's so easy for them to use gold and and to avoid hyperinflation and to tell the general public, you don't have to be afraid of inflation anymore because we can use gold. And we even had the president of the Dutch Central Bank, Klaas Knot, he was in Buitenhof, which is a leading program on Dutch TV, and he explained on the question why you still own gold. We need gold to bring back trust into the system when this system fails. So we know the game plan. And sorry guys, Bitcoin is not part of their game plan. It can be part of your game plan. It's great to diversify. But look what happened to El Salvador. The IMF openly said 2 weeks ago, El Salvador has to rein in their Bitcoin policy. Otherwise, we have a problem. So they're open about it.
They're fighting it. I mean, that's then their incentives. That makes a lot of sense. And by the way, guys, if you are disagreeing with anything that's being said, follow Willem Middelkoop on Twitter, and we just tweeted a picture of us. So just like put your comments under there and discuss it a little bit there, so that we can hear your opinion too.
Who's following me on Twitter?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. There's a bunch here. That's good. He has good stuff out there.
Thank you for that.
He might be wrong about Bitcoin, but there's good stuff there anyways.
Yeah.
So now El Salvador feels the pressure of the IMF.
Yeah.
The powers that are right now in charge, they want to fight this. But is an example like El Salvador, and we should definitely question all of the motives behind any kind of politicians and don't just be excited about that, because recently, a few months ago, he also talked about price controls. So please know that he's not like the free market hero that some people make him out to be. Yeah. But still, there's some countries discussing this. So is it not possible that some countries that have been screwed over by the IMF system, by the post-Bretton Woods system, or the Bretton Woods system, that they're adopting Bitcoin and it's more marginal? Maybe it's not Russia, maybe it's not Europe, because Europe is not that innovative, right? Maybe it's not the United States, but maybe it's a smaller one.
Well, that's the best case scenario actually for Bitcoin, that a few countries, and actually President-elect Trump, he said, when I'm re-elected, I will start building a national reserve, 200,000 Bitcoin, whatever.
No. I was in the audience in that speech, and it was mostly bullshit.
Mostly is.
I mean, surprise. But he's appealing to the right audience, which is great, and he's talking about Bitcoin, which is great. But
let's forget about him.
He basically said the United States right now has a few 10,000 Bitcoin. I don't know how many it is, and they would not sell it. Yeah. But they've been stolen from some people.
Well, let's forget Trump. The best thing for Bitcoin would be that certain countries, more than the 3 or 4 now who own a bit of Bitcoin, let's say Qatar or Dubai or the Saudis will say, we'll invest 1 or 2% of our reserves in Bitcoin. And then you could have a few more countries doing the same, because then it's not a taboo anymore. Because in the world of central banking and governments, they'll look at each other, and the IMF might get mad. So they all behave. There's a lot of groupthink, and when 1 or 2 of these countries might start to buy some Bitcoin, not flee to Bitcoin, but just diversify a bit, and this would become a trend, that would change a lot. Because this is such a small market with 93% of all Bitcoin already being mined. But actually, I'm afraid there's a small chance that this will happen, because central banks and governments know that once they start diversifying into Bitcoin, they will put so much more pressure on the current financial system. So in a way, they will help to break the financial system, which might then lose control, and that's the last thing they want. So, and there will be a lot of communication, not openly, but through the back doors and diplomatic channels, and the IMF and everybody will call the central bank, please don't do this, because this might bring the system down.
So Willem, to restate your argument, to fully understand that, you're saying because the incentives are against them adopting Bitcoin, it wouldn't happen. But does that same argument not apply to also gold? Because it also takes away power from them. It's tethered to something hard, something that cannot be inflated that easily, so therefore shouldn't be any incentive. So why don't they just do like another currency reform, do a haircut, do some inflation, introduce like a new euro or whatever?
Of course, but that's what they try to do. In the big reset, I proposed that we need a gold revaluation. But there's not one central banker who has proposed that yet. They know they can play the gold revaluation card, but they will only do that when the crisis in the fiat money system is that large that they'll need to play that joker. And they will try to stabilize the system by bringing the central bank digital currency, by changing laws. There was this new law or proposal here in the Netherlands that as a wealthy individual, if you want to immigrate, there's an exit tax. So expect much more financial repression. And people who have all their savings in Bitcoin, be very careful, because when they close the on and off ramps, and we've seen that happening in the Netherlands already, people who used to bank, had an account with the Rabobank, if they had a business account there, they couldn't do any trades with or in Bitcoin. So I'm afraid we'll see much more financial repression, a lot less financial freedom, and that's why I'm already diversifying my assets also outside Europe. I bought a few apartments in Dubai, because Dubai is for me the new Switzerland. Switzerland was neutral for 200 years, but now they took part in the Western sanctions against Russia. And don't forget, there are 140 countries worldwide who didn't join the Western sanctions. And, well, you need to diversify, and maybe if you're quite wealthy, you also need to look outside your own jurisdiction, maybe.
So it makes a lot of sense. Of course, there's the danger with on and off ramps, and we've seen this being shut down in some governments, and some governments also returned it again. India, for instance, and China's also like sometimes wobbly on that. Yeah, the risks also happened with gold, of course, historically with 1913 and the executive order there. So it's all about like risk management and not putting, I guess what you're saying, don't put all of your eggs in one basket, which makes sense.
But it happens a lot in the crypto space. The crypto space is like the real estate space. Many real estate investors, they have all their money in real estate. And now they know that they're a bit fucked because of the change of the tax system here in the Netherlands. But I see that a lot in the crypto community as well. Everything in crypto, because crypto has been the fastest horse in the race. And that's the way how you can make money and become wealthy. But if you have created a bit of wealth through crypto, be sure to diversify.
Absolutely, and be careful with the C word in this audience here. We only say Bitcoin.
I agree. I agree.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I agree.
And we know that you do, because that's what you're focusing on. You have also invested in Bitcoin as well. But yeah, it seems like you do see that there is a case for it, but gold might be still like the stronger horse. On a theoretical level, do you think that gold is still superior to Bitcoin in some aspects, like monetary aspects, or do you think it's mostly just because of the beliefs of the central bankers and the politicians and just like older generations that think like, oh, I can touch gold, it's shiny, therefore valuable?
No, I'm on the record because during a podcast 2 years ago, I explained why Bitcoin is the best money ever invented. You know, that's a fact.
Amen.
It's not to please you, but if you look, I'm a student of monetary history. If you study monetary history, you will learn that over 200 fiat money systems have failed over the last few hundred years. And Bitcoin is even superior to gold because you can store your wealth It doesn't matter what location you use. And that's unique about Bitcoin. And in a way, Bitcoin is more scarce than gold because there's still a lot of gold to be mined. Gold is very scarce, but in Bitcoin, 93% is already being mined. And if you look at the way Bitcoin was designed, it is superior money. But we have to be realistic. And from a central bank point of view, gold is superior to Bitcoin. And if you want to know what will happen next, you have to understand what the people in power will do.
Sure.
Yeah, but I explained that.
It's superior based on the beliefs in the people in the system right now, not necessarily because of the technical aspects of Bitcoin versus gold.
No, Bitcoin is designed in a way that you could even say that people have been thinking and building and designing money systems for over 5,000 years. And I think Bitcoin is the first which solved almost all or maybe all of the problems money faces. And that's so fucking special, I once said in a podcast. And that also explains why we have these kind of conferences worldwide. It really, people, especially younger people, I'm always surprised that us boomers, it took me a bit longer to understand this. But the younger generation, it's like they understood this from the start and they ran with it. And it has built such a powerful community worldwide. But it's not the community who is in power, and then they will say, the Bitcoiners, but we will be next. And again, be careful what you wish for.
Indeed. So we have only one more question left, if you can answer this fast. So right now we're living under a petrodollar system. If you don't know what that is, Google it, Bitcoin Magazine. Alex Gladstein has a fantastic article about the petrodollar in there. But recently Saudi Arabia said that they don't want to price their oil in dollars anymore. However, they're still doing it. So nothing has changed right now. How do you see that?
No. It's a bit more nuanced as well. We are in a petrodollar system. We were in a petrodollar system. And that was because the US took the dollar off the gold standards in '71. So then we had a dollar crisis. And then Henry Kissinger had a great idea. Let's ask the Saudis to join our team. We'll give them all security and military assistance they need. And then they have to assure that all oil from the Saudis and OPEC would only be sold in dollars. And that worked until 2 years ago. And then China made a deal with the Saudis that they could pay with their own currency. So now Saudi accepts other currencies than the dollar as well.
Okay.
And that means the end of the current petrodollar system, but it doesn't mean the Saudis don't accept dollars anymore. And that's why I believe that we'll have two separate systems. The dollar system will stay around in the Western world. We'll keep trading and investing in dollars, but the BRICS community will build their own currency, their own trading system, and make their own deals, maybe commodity-based, and this could be a big change for the international financial system, that we move from a unipolar to a multipolar world. So the dollar won't be the sole reserve currency anymore. We'll have several next to it.
Fascinating. Give it up to Willem Middelkoop.
Thank you. Thank you. That was great. Thank you.
All right, welcome back to the Bitcoin Magazine live desk, coming live to you from Bitcoin Amsterdam. My name is Aaron van Widdem. I'm the editor-in-chief of Bitcoin Magazine, and I'm joined by Alan Helm, head of product at Bitcoin for Corporations, and Amanda Fabiano, co-founder of Second Gate Advisory. Amanda, and Alan, both. We just heard Willem Middelkoop, Dutch Goldbach, basically talk about how states will never put Bitcoin on their balance sheets. No strategic Bitcoin reserves for states because it would destabilize, well, the fiat currency system and basically undermine the power of the state themselves. Your thoughts?
I think a lot of the fiat is already broken, and we're seeing countries already start to mine Bitcoin. So you wonder, like, where is that Bitcoin going? Do they already hold Bitcoin on balance sheet? I think
which countries are mining Bitcoin?
So there's been talk that Russia mines Bitcoin, although they haven't really said it. Kazakhstan mines Bitcoin, Venezuela mines Bitcoin, Iran, and there's one more that I'm not thinking of. But yeah, there's like 4 or 5 different countries that are already mining.
So, and your assumption is that they are holding on to the Bitcoin as a sort of Bitcoin strategic reserve?
There has to be some hold, right? Or maybe they're selling, right? And then that's allowing them to build. But either way, they're mining Bitcoin, so they're involved in the network in some way, shape, or form.
Okay, Alan, any thoughts?
Yeah, I don't really buy into Willem's argument here that nation states aren't incentivized to want to adopt Bitcoin. Like, we already see they have gold on their balance sheets, right? And similar to corporations, like, ultimately, the control of the monetary supply means nothing if that currency is valued at nothing, right? So, depending on, like, incentives, everyone's got different incentives here. Like, it's, first mover advantage, right? The first one to do it, which has been El Salvador, right, is going to be at a competitive advantage here. And so I just don't really think the argument as a whole stands up very well.
That's the other country, El Salvador. They're also mining Bitcoin.
That's right.
Exactly.
The most important one.
Exactly. Whoops.
Speaking of mining, why is there no mining in Europe, Amanda?
Energy costs are just too high, and the policies around energy are just not useful to miners, right? You need to be in a position where you feel super confident that the infrastructure you're building is not going to be something that is going to continue to be, pushed back on. You're spending millions of dollars on transformers, on containers, right? On building a community around that. And right now, that cost is just too high in Europe. You're seeing miners, do things in the U.S. like help stabilize the grid, right? Like, that's not really an option in Europe, I don't think, right? Or I haven't heard of. I think also capital markets is a little bit harder, right, for miners to build over here too. So I think, I'm pretty bearish on European mining. I think we've seen a lot more in Africa as like a new location, which is pretty cool, but I think dominance will still remain in the U.S.
I mean, I've got a question for you. So I know you've been involved a lot over stateside in the U.S. with policymakers, overall energy and, the symbiotic relationship that there is there with mining. There's a lot of EU policymakers here as well. Just curious what kind of conversations you've had with them there.
And I haven't had any, actually.
Really?
yeah, I think I might be like American proud over here.
Yeah, let's go.
All right. It's time to go back to the main stage of Bitcoin Amsterdam.
Is your company ready for the next evolution in financial strategy? Bitcoin for Corporations is your partner in securing the future of your business. With exclusive membership benefits, our comprehensive masterclass, and a network of trusted service providers, we provide the insights and resources to help you incorporate Bitcoin into your financial strategy, ensuring stability and long-term value. Strengthen your business. Innovate with confidence. Bitcoin for Corporations, protecting your treasury and positioning you for the future.